Begin today the Gemara on Daf Kuf Mem Ches Amud Beis, 2 lines up from the bottom of the Yamud, where it says Amar Rav Sheishes. Okay, so the Gemara continues the discussion regarding a matana of a shchiv mirah that Chachamim instituted, according to most opinions, midrabanan, that when a person before he passes away says that he wants to give something to so and so, even without any kinyan, just by saying he wants to give, his words take effect. So here the Gemara is going to discuss different languages that the person uses, whether it's effective. Amar Rav Sheishes, what's if the person said Yito, so and so should take, or V'yiske, so and so should be Zoiche, should gain this possession, or V'yachsik, he should possess this, V'yikne, he should acquire this. Kulan lashon matanehe. They're all languages that can be used as a gift, and therefore it takes effect. B'masnita tana, in a braisa it was taught af yachsin v'yiras. If he uses the terms of yachsin v'yiras, which are both terms of inheritance, that he says that so and so should inherit me, it also takes effect. Now, so the Gemara clarifies this. When does that take effect? He's using these terms of inheritance regarding a stranger that has no relation to you to inherit you. It's not going to take effect. This is only if he says so in relation to a person that is fit to inherit him. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Breikehi. This is following the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Breikehi. If you remember, we had before in the previous perek, Rabbi Yochanan ben Breikehi says a person has the ability to give the Yerusha to whoever he wants, as long as it's someone that's Roy L'Yersha. As a Yerusha we're talking about, not just as a gift. Even as a Yerusha, with the term Yerusha, he's able to give to one son over other sons, or to one Yerush over others, possibly. So that's what this Bryce is talking about, Rabbi Yochanan ben Breikehi's opinion. And we pass like Rabbi Yochanan ben Breikehi. The Shiloh was asked regarding the following Lashonis. Kuf Mem Tes, we're right at the beginning of the Yamud. Yehana behen. If he says about this person, he should have benefit from my properties. Mahu. What does this expression of Yehana behen mean? Does he mean that I have a kula matana kama? Is he saying that it's all going to be a gift for him and therefore he could have benefit from this? All he's saying is that he could have some benefit from it, but he's not giving it to him. How about the term Yeroya behen? He should be seen with my properties. Mahu. What does that term mean? Or Yamoid behen? He stands in my properties. Yishon behen. He relies on my properties. Mahu. What do all these terms mean? Is it all a sign of giving? Just like a person that owns something, you always see him with his properties, or a person relies on his assets. So that's what he's expressing with these words? Or maybe not. Maybe he's just saying that he can stand there, he can rely on it, but it's not his. Teiku, so these expressions remain unresolved. So in such a case, obviously, if we don't know the answer to this, what's going to be the halacha? The person that's going to come and say, give it to me. So the Yarshim can say, this expression that our father said is inconclusive, and they won't have to give it to him. Another shayla that was asked regarding a shchiv mirah, he sold all of his properties. Mahu. What's going to be the halacha in this case? So what this is basically speaking about is, it's not really like the matan of a shchiv mirah. What the novelty about the matan of a shchiv mirah is that it's no kinyan necessary. Just the words the person says, it takes effect. But over here, the person is actually selling it properly. He's making a kinyan, and the person that's buying is paying for this proper kinyan before he passes away. But the Gemara Shaila over here is whether the halacha that it said in the Mishnah applies here. If a person sells all of his properties and then he recovers, and do we say that he only sold it, we have a umdana, do we say that we assume that he only sold it because he thought he's not going to recover, but now that he did recover, he can retract from this, he can take it all back? Or maybe that's only said regarding a gift of a shchiv mirah, but regarding a case where a person sold and he's getting money for this, in such a case he has money now. So we're not going to say that he can retract this if he recovers. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, Im Amad Ein Chayzer. In such a case, if the person gets well, he recovers, he's not going to be able to retract from the sale. But the Gemara says, V'zimnin, sometimes, Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, Im Amad Chayzer, that if he gets up, if he recovers, he could retract from this sale. We do assume that he only sold all of his properties because he thought he's not going to survive. But if he does survive, even though it's a sale and he has money, it doesn't matter, he's able to retract from this. Says the Gemara V'loi Pligi, there's no argument here. Ha, the Istan Lezuzah Beinayo. Here, where it says that he could retract from this, is because you see that he was holding on to the money. He got money, payment for the sale, and he kept the money there in a bank account. He's not touching it. Why is he keeping the money there? Because in the case he recovers, he wants to be able to give back the money to the buyer. And here is where the money was already used up. He went, he took the money, he paid it up for loans that he had. So we see that he wanted the sale to stay in effect, to have the money to be able to pay up a loan. So in such a case, even if he survives and recovers, he can't retract from the sale. That's Rashbam's pshat on this Gemara. Other Rishonim actually say the exact opposite. That the Gemara is saying that if the money is still there, he can't retract from the sale if he recovers, because he has money to live with. The only reason we allow him to retract is because we assume that he doesn't want to sell, because what am I going to live with? But he has money. If he paid up all the money for the loan, so now he doesn't have any money. So it's just like if he gave a gift, he gave it all away, he has nothing to live with. So then we say that he would be able to retract from this sale. Another shaila. Shchiv meira shahida. A person that's dying, and he doesn't say he's giving a gift, but he comes and he says, I say that these properties that I have are not mine. They belong to so-and-so. Mahu. What do these words mean? According to the Rashbam, the pshat of the Gemara's question over here is, when a person is maida, do we take it seriously? Do we say that if he comes and he admits, we know the concept of Haidas Baldin K'meidem Dami, a person admits, so then his words, we trust it, and therefore we say the same thing here? Or there's a concept that the Gemara brings in Sanhedrin and other places that many times when a person before he passes away says that, oh, I owe so-and-so money and I owe so-and-so money, he doesn't really mean it. The only reason he's saying it is because he doesn't want, after he passes away, that people should come and think that his children are rich and you can take a lot of money from them. He wants people to think that his children have no money. So maybe here, when he's being maida, that his properties don't belong to him, he's not, don't take it serious. He's just saying it so people should think that his children are not rich. Taisus has a different shot. Maybe in the end of the sugi I'll explain, but this is the Rashbam's shot here in this Gemara. So now, Toshama, the Gemara brings a raya from the following story. Isser Giyayra. Isser was a ger. Now the story with Isser Giyayra was that the Rashbam here brings the story about him. In the Gemara, it brings an Amayra that is known by the name of Rav Mari Bar Rochel. We'll see soon in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to quote. Now this Rav Mari Bar Rochel, it always mentions him by his mother's name, which is unusual. Usually always mentioned by the father's name. Yeah. Who was his father? His father was this Isser. What was the story? Rachel was the daughter of Shmuel that lived in Bavel. And she got captured. And she had a relation with one of the ones that captured her, which was this Isser, that was a guy. And then she ran away to Eretz Yisrael. But this Isser, that was now the father of the child that she gave birth to, this Isser became a ger before she gave birth to this child. So this child was from a pregnancy that was from a guy, but even before he was born, he already became a ger. And they remained married. This was his father. That's the story of this Isser. Now, so here, this Isser Giyayre, before he passed away, so the story was that Havele Teresa Alfi Zuzi, he had 12,000 Zuzim that were Bei Rava, that he gave to Rava to keep for him, to safekeep for him. Now, Rav Mari Berei, so Rav Mari, his son, as I just described the story, his pregnancy was before Isser was a Yid, but then he was born once his father, Isser, was already a Yid, B'Kedusha and holiness. That was the story with his son, Rav Mari. Now, this Rav Mari, if that's the case, does not yashin his father. The halacha by a ger is, if you give birth to a child, that the pregnancy began after the person is already a ger, so then it's your child that yashins you, like any other child. But since this is a child that the pregnancy was from before he became a ger, so then this Rav Mari does not inherit his father as a child. Mm-hmm. Now, where was Rav Mari? Obei Rav Hava. He was sitting in the Beis Medrash. Some Agoyres here that it's not saying that he was sitting in Beis Medrash, or Bar Bei Rav Hava, that he was a Talmud Chacham. Now Rav Mari is quoted in the Gemara, he was a big Talmud Chacham. So now, what the Gemara says, Rava that had all this money from Isser wanted to keep the money. That's what it seems like in the simple pshat of the Gemara. He didn't want that his son, Rav Mari, should inherit this. He has it. What's the halacha of a ger that has no yarshim? Who gets the money of the ger? It's hefker, and anybody can keep it. So Rava has it now in his possession as a pekadain, and he wants to keep it. He doesn't want that Rav Mari should get it. So Amar Rava says, Heichen akninu Rav Mari lahani zuzi. How is Rav Mari going to get this money? If his father Isser wants to give the money to his son Rav Mari, he can't. he can't give it to him, and therefore I'm going to keep it. And Rava goes through many different options to explain that his father can't give it to him. If you're going to say that his son Rav Mari will inherit this from his father, he doesn't. Lav by Yerushu, because he was born from a pregnancy before he was a ger, so he does not inherit it. If you would say that his father can give it to him as a matana, that's the whole halacha of a shchiv mirah, that he says, I want to give it to so-and-so, and it takes effect even without a kinyan. So that would apply here also regarding his son Rav Mari. So the Gemara says an interesting thing. No, it doesn't work this way. Matna shchiv mirah ki yerusha shavyu rabbanon. The matana of a shchiv mirah, the fact that it takes effect even without any kinyan is because the whole takana of Chachamim was to consider the matana of a shchiv mirah like a Yerusha, that it's like that person becomes now your Yerush, he's inheriting you. And therefore the rule is, Kol heichid iseh b'Yerusha, only in relation to somebody that's within this concept of Yerusha, iseh b'matana. Regarding him, the concept of a matana, a gift of a shchiv mirah, could take effect. Kol heichid lesser b'Yerusha, but if a shchiv mirah wants to give a gift to someone, and that someone is not in the parsha of Yerusha at all, lesser b'matana. The matana of a shchiv mirah cannot take effect either. So what this basically means is, if you give a gift as a shchiv mirah to any other yid in the world, so that yid is in the concept of Yerusha, and it's theoretically possible that person would yashin you. Ultimately, every yid is a relative to another yid. We're all bnei Avram, Yitzchak, veYaakov. So therefore, Isei b'Yerusha, whoever you want to give a gift to, the concept of Yerusha, that this person would yashin you, is possible in a very far distant relation, but he's within this concept of Yerusha. There is where the takana of Chachamim of Matna Shchiv Mirah applies. You can say, I'm giving it him as a gift, and now he becomes your Yerush. But regarding this Rav Mari that was born from a pregnancy that was from a father that was a guy, so he's not b'chlal in the Torah of Yerusha, so the takana of Chachamim regarding a matan of Shchiv Mirah does not apply either. So that's impossible. If you would say that he can acquire it by Meshicha, by taking it with his hands, less nugabe, but the father Isser does not have the money. Rava says, I have the money, I put it away somewhere, and therefore he doesn't have it, he can't give it to his son through Meshicha. If you would want to make a kinyan with chalipin, so you don't need to have the money here actually, you just make a kinyan chalipin on a property or on whatever, even on metaltalin, but you don't even need it here, so he can make a kinyan to give it to his son. This way, Chalipin is with the handkerchief, when the buyer gives the seller a handkerchief and in exchange you acquire. But that won't work either. Because matbeya nikna b'chalipin. The rule is you can't make the kinyan of chalipin for a matbeya, for money. In the pasuk where it says the kinyan of chalipin, it says shalafish naloi. So it's a keli that you kind of only. The Gemara, and we learned in Bava Basra, the Gemara over there brings the source from the pasuk there that the kinyan of chalipin is not for money itself. So that doesn't work either. Another option, agav karka, if the father Isser would want to give it to his son through a kinyan together with a karka. There's halacha regarding a karka that if someone acquires a karka, a piece of land, along with that piece of land, you can sell him whatever other movable items, and you don't need a separate kinyan for those movable items. He acquires it along with the property. So over here, Isser can give to his son Rav Mari the money that Rava says that I have, together with another piece of karka. But he's not going to be able to do that because I know that les layada, he does not have any piece of land. Finally, he says another option, if you would use this concept of maimet shloshton, which we had before in the Gemara, when you have three people that are standing together and you say in their presence that the money that so-and-so has for me, instead of him giving it to me, let him give it to someone else, and even without any kinyan, this takes effect. So seemingly you could do that here as well, but you have to have the one that is holding the money for you has to be present here, right? You have someone that has money for you and he owes you the money, so that person has to be standing there together with you and with one more person, and three people here, and you say the money that you owe me should go to someone else. So Rava says if you would want to do that in this case as well, ishalach li, if Isser is going to send to call me and that I should be here so he can give his money to his son, lo yazilna, I'm not going to go. So he's not going to be able to do this. So therefore, Rava says, I can keep the money. He's going to pass away, and he's a ger, he has no yorshim, and I keep the money. So now the Gemara says on this, Maskefla Rav Ikke Bereid Rav Ami. Rav Ikke Bereid Rav Ami was there in the Besmedrash at that time when Rava was saying this. So he asked Rava, there's another option. Amai, why is Rava saying there's no option that the father Isser could give this to his son Rav Mari? Veloidi Isser, let Isser come and say a hoidah, let him admit, let him come and say that Halein Zuzi, that this money, that Rav Mari Nino, it belongs to Rav Mari. And v'lekininu ba'oidisa, and let that itself be a kinyan to take effect by the very fact that he's maida. Being maida in itself is a power that it creates a kinyan. This is something that the Gemara also discusses in other places. There's a big discussion here in the Shainim about this. What's exactly this kinyan of Aidisa? Just by being maida, I mean, Haidah usually is when your person is maida to something, so you don't need any Eidim. Once you're maida, Haidah is Baldin Kamei Eidim Dami, it takes effect automatically. So some say that it's not really a kinyan, it just means the fact that you're maida, just because you're maida, so we have to follow what you're saying. Once you're maida to something, so then we trust your word, and therefore, just by him being maida, that it belongs, that this money really belongs to my son. So we're going to have to follow that, and it belongs to his son. Or others say, no, it's a kinyan. Kinyan idea is when you say something, Chachamim now treat this like a kinyan, that it takes effect, that it'll belong to his son Isser. So why can't, or his son Marav Mari, that is. So why can't Isser do this? So now, so now, meanwhile, so this question that Rav Ikke Berei Ravami asked in the Bismedrish came back to the father Isser. Some say that it got back because if you learned over here before in the Gemara says that Rav Mari himself was that time in the Bismedrish, so he heard this. So he brought back the message to his father that the money that you have by Rav and you want me to get, there's a way how you can do it, just by this idisa, by you being Maida. So now, Nafik Edisa Mibei Isser, and Isser actually did this. He was Maida, that this money belongs to Isser, and now it belongs to him, and Rava has to bring the money to Isser. So Ikbid Rava was disappointed about this, that why did they reveal to Isser this option, that he's able to give the money to his son in this way. Amar, he said, Kamigmiri Tainese Leinchi, you're teaching people how to say arguments, and you're causing me a loss. You didn't have to teach him that he has this option, and I wouldn't have this loss. That's the story. So just now the Gemara is proving over here from the story something, but before we see the proof, the question that Taisus here discusses is a very long Taisus here on the Sugya, goes here in Amid Beis, is that there's a concept of mitzvah l'kaim divrei ames. When we see that there's a dying person that wants something to be done, there's a mitzvah to fulfill what he wants. This seems very surprising over here that Rava is trying to prevent Isser from having his last wish, that his son, Rav Mari, should get his money. Why is Rava trying to prevent this? So Taisus has a whole long discussion regarding certain cases which are an exception to this, and this is also a case which is an exception to this. But there are Mefarshim that say that Rava was not really trying to prevent Rava from giving the Isser, that is, to giving it to his son. Rather, Rava wanted to be the one to have this chus, to do the chesed, to bring the money back to his son Rav Mari, even though he wasn't obligated to, and then it will be his mitzvah. And here, once the father Issa gave it away to his son Rav Mari, so now it's not his mitzvah anymore. It's his. So he was upset about the fact that he lost the opportunity of a mitzvah.
What about the aggravation that he gave?
Aggravation, okay. He taught him a lot of Torah. He taught him all these different things. He learned a lot out of this. So what's the Gemara proving from this? Going back to the Shaila the Gemara asked before regarding Haidah, when a Shchiv Mirah is Maida, do we take that seriously or not? So here we see the story that Isser, the father, was Maida, and the Haidah was taken seriously. And it took effect, and it became his son Rav Mari. So therefore we see when a Shchiv Mirah is Maida, we take that seriously. That's Rashbam's pshat of the Gemara. Now the question that Taisvis asks on this pshat is that the Rashbam said before that the whole reason why we had a shaila, whether we take Haidah seriously or not, is because sometimes a person might be Maida only because he doesn't want his son to look rich. But if that's the case, how are we bringing a rai from this story? Here, he was actually maida that it does belong to his son. He's maida that his son is rich by this. So it doesn't really fit with what the Gemara is saying before. That's the question Taisus has. Taisus has a different shot over here, that the Gemara is really discussing Haidah. Is Haidah kinyan or is Haidah not a kinyan? That's what the Gemara thinks. Taisus has a different shot. Okay, but this is the Rashbam's shot of the Gemara. Okay. Going back now to the Mishnah, okay, what did it say in the Mishnah regarding a matana of a shchiv mirah? Shia karka kol shuhu, if a person gives away as a matana of a shchiv mirah, but he leaves some for himself, then matnasa kayemes, the matana stays in effect, even if he recovers, he can't retract from this, because we see he kept something for himself. Says the Gemara v'kama kol shuhu, when it says kol shuhu, what is that kol shuhu? What's the amount that he has to keep for himself, that we say that he can't have charata? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav, so Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, karka kedei parnasasai. If he leaves for himself a property, that would be enough of a value that he can make a parnasa of it, that he can live from by this. Because that's then enough of a reason that he can't have charata from what he gave away, because he left enough for himself. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar metaltalin kadei panasasi. It doesn't have to necessarily be a property. It could even be any movable items that he could do business with and make enough of a parnas out of this. Amar Rab Zeira said, Kama machavnan shmaitase desabi. How exact and precise is the halachas that these two great older Amoraim said? One was Rav and the other was Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba. And he explains, because what's the reason why we're saying that if a shchiv mirah does not pass away and now? There's a question whether he could retract or not. So what's the reason why we say that he cannot retract from this? Is because the ikoi, because if he gets up, if he survives, if he recovers, samachallah, he has what to rely on. So therefore he can't retract from the gift. If so, metal tulinami ikoi samichalavayu. So therefore, even if it's not karka, Rav said karka, but Rav says kedei parnasasai. As long as he has enough parnasai, that's the whole point here. That he could still live by this. And Rav Yirmiyah adds to that. It's not only karka, but it's even metaltlan. As long as he can rely on this, right? So it's referring to both points. Number one, the chiddush over here is even though the Mishnah used the term kol shehu, but Rav is saying it's not kol shehu. Kol shehu sounds like even if it's a tiny drop, but it can't be a kol shehu. It has to be at least enough kedei parnasasai. And Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba is saying, even though the Mishnah said karka, but it doesn't mean a karka. It could even be metaltalim, because the point there is that he has what to rely on for his parnasa if he recovers, and so therefore there's no reason to allow him to retract from the gift. So therefore he's saying what they're saying is very precise, because this makes sense according to the reason of this concept. Maskefla Rav Yosef, but Rav Yosef asks on this, Umay kavnasa. Why are you saying that their halacha is so exact that it makes sense? Mandama metaltalin, the one that says, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba that said, that the Mishnah over here, it means that even if he just leaves himself metaltalin, that's enough, but karka tanan. The Mishnah says karka. So how can he say different than what it says in the Mishnah? The Mishnah says only if he left for himself a piece of land. And also, mandama kedei parnasasai, Rav that said there has to be enough that he can make a parnasa from this, but kol shu tanan. In our Mishnah it says kol shu, so kol shu means just a tiny drop. And as the Gemara is going to go through both of these points, that bringing examples from other Mishnayos where we find an expression of karka. And does the word karka mean literally karka? And also kol shuhu. Does kol shuhu mean literally a tiny drop? Okay, so now this continues here to the Gemara. The next Amid, we're going to do the first part, which goes on to the next Amid. Let's see. So the Gemara brings, Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says back to Rav Yosef, what's your question? You have a problem that the Mishnah says karka and kol shuhu, but v'chol hecha the tani karka. Is it true that wherever the Mishnah uses the term karka dafka, so the term karka in the Mishnah means literally a piece of property? It can't mean just something valuable, which is karka, but it could also mean metaltalin. And he brings them an example from a Mishnah. Vatnan, there's a Mishnah in Masechta Peah that says, Hakaisev kol nechasav lavdei. A person has all of his possessions, his properties, and he also owns a slave, Evet Kanani. And he writes in a document that he's giving away all of his properties to his slave. So then Yatsa ben Chayrin. So that means that the slave himself goes free, because included in all of his possessions is the slave himself. So if he's writing that he's giving everything away to the slave, so that means that the slave acquires himself together with all those possessions. Now, Shir Karka Kol Shuhu, if he writes in the document that he's leaving a karka, a small piece of karka for himself, then lo yatsa ben chayrin, then the slave will not go free. Why? Because when he writes that he's leaving that karka for himself, that karka that he says he's leaving for himself could actually be referring to this eved, because an eved is compared to a karka. When we learn from the pasuk V'snachalta ma'islam v'nechem achreichem, we learn that an eved is like a piece of karka. So maybe when he wrote that he's leaving that piece of karka for himself, he meant that he's keeping the eved for himself. So therefore what happens over here is, if the eved is not being freed, so whatever gift he's giving to this eved is not going to take effect either. Because even if the eved would receive a gift, the rule is whatever an eved owns goes back to the master. Kol ma shekana eved kana rabbi. So the eved really gets nothing. The master was just writing this maybe to make his eved feel good, or it seems like he's sort of teasing him, but the eved gets nothing if he leaves a karka kolshu for himself. Rab Shimon says, no, in such a case where he wrote karka, we say that the eved will go free. Karka doesn't mean the eved. But la'olam hu ben chayrin, the eved will go free even if he's leaving a karka kolshu, because that does not go on the eved. Only in a case when will the eved not go free? Ache yaimar, unless this master says, Kol nuchasayin esunin lepleini abdi, all of my possessions are given as a gift to my servant, to my eved. Chotz me'echad miriboy shebehen. Besides one of 10,000 in it, I'm not giving away. So he says there's a certain percent of my possessions that I'm not giving away. And he doesn't identify what is that of his possessions that he's not giving away. So it's in this case that Rab Shimon says that we can assume that maybe, what is that 1% that he does not want to give away? It's the Eved that he does not want to give away. In such a case, we say that the Eved does not go free. So if the Eved does not go free, so then he gets nothing. So in the case where he said karka, because karka is something specific, karka is not the Eved. But if he says echad miriboy, what's that echad miriboy? That could be the Eved, and therefore the Eved does not go free. Even if this Eved is his value is much more than this echad miriboy, it doesn't matter. It could be that this is the way he's valuing his Eved, and therefore the Eved will not go free. Okay, let's see the continuation here. At the conclusion of the Inyan, the Gemara now says, now what do we see regarding this Braisa, regarding the opinion of the Tanakama? When the master said, I'm leaving over a karka for myself, and then the Eved will not go free because the Eved is like karka. Now, V'amar Abdimi Bar Yosef, V'amar Rabbi Lazar. So he said that also metaltal and shir etzel Eved. That just like if he says he's leaving the karka for himself, the Eved does not go free. It's the same thing also regarding metaltalin. If the master would say, I'm giving away everything, but one piece of metaltalin, one movable item I'm not giving away, that movable item could be the Eved as well. Why? Because an Eved, on one hand, an Eved is compared to karka. That's what you see from the pasuk. On the other hand, an Eved walks around. He's not like karka that stays put in one place. So you could compare an Eved to metaltalin as well. He's not like a regular piece of metaltalin. He's not an object. But an Eved could be compared to metaltalin. So if the master would say that I want to keep a metaltalin for myself, that could also be referring to the Eved. Right, so right here, what do we see? Even though the Mishnah said the term karka, but the word karka in the Mishnah is lav dafke. The word karka in the Mishnah could be also even if the master used the term metaltalin. Now, Rav Dimi Bar Yosef goes on to say regarding another halacha, "V'loy asum metaltalin shir eitzel ksube." By a ksube, where there's another halacha there that Mishnah brings over there, we don't compare metaltalin to karka. That halacha that it says by ksube, the Gemara quoted this before here in this Masechta. Not too long ago we learned this. When a person before he passes away is saying that he's giving all his properties to his children, and he tells his wife, "But I'm leaving you a little piece of karka." So the Gemara, the Mishnah there says that the wife is moichel or ksube. The fact that she sees that the husband is giving everything away to the children, and she's ready to accept one small piece of karka, and she's quiet about this, she's moichel her rights to collect the ksuba. Regarding that, it's only if the husband gave her an actual piece of karka. If the husband gave her a piece of metaltal and a movable item, it won't apply. She's not moichel or ksuba. Okay, so what Abaye, again, the point here is Abaye is proving from here that I see that the term karka in the Mishnah is lav dafke. Karka can be metaltal. So therefore in our Mishnah, when we talk about a shchiv merah, we could also say that karka is lav dafke. As long as he left for himself even metaltalin, that's kedei parnasasai, then I would say that he can't retract from the gift. So Rav Yosef tells him, no, you can't compare. Hasam, over there in that Mishnah, bedinu delay listening karka. Really, a taka shouldn't have said karka, because it's lav dafka karka. Why does it mention karka? But I did the toneration. This Mishnah is continuing from a previous Mishnah there where it mentions karka. That's the only reason it says karka. Over there it says, Rabbi Kiva Oimer, karka kolshu, even a small piece of karka, chayeves bepeya, the mitzvah of peya applies. And also bikurim and velichte valeim prusbul. You can write a prusbul on this. The rule by prusbul is when you're writing in order that the loans during Shemitah should not be absolved, you have to own a little piece of karka and veliknes imam nechasim she'en lamachrayis, and also to acquire along with a property. This is the king of Agav that the Gemara spoke about before, that together with the property you could acquire movable items, you could acquire bekesel, b'shtar, b'chazakeh. So because there's a previous Mishnah there that's talking specifically about karka, shemachi ketani karka. Therefore it mentions in this Mishnah karka as well, but karka is lav dafke. That's over there. But in our Mishnah though, Rav Yosef argues it says karka. And there's no previous Mishnah, there's no reason to say karka. So if it says karka, then the person that dies, only if he left over a piece of karka for himself, then I say that if he recovers, then he won't be able to retract from this gift that he gave.